not like you.
Hello, everybody. Today we are everybody, meaning the one person who listens to this. Today I want to talk about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, he's going to save us all. Yay! No, he's not. He's just a guy. He's from South Africa. He is from South Africa. Ba 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 da ba ba. Yep. He is from South Africa and he's going to save us all. You know he's from South Africa when you hear him talk. Americans might not be aware of this, but the South African accent is very distinctive. It's easily confused for the Australian accent. But let me just put the phone down. Sorry, let me just put my high-tech electronic recording equipment down. There we go. You can tell because of his accent, and the South African accent is a lovely, warm, friendly cross between the Australian accent and, let's say, a Nazi. Now, the Australian accent, of course, is sort of like Cockney English, but with all the vowels clipped and gone back one up the level. There's a level of vowels, open mouth vowels and closed mouth vowels and so on. All the vowels are clipped like this. If you're from Australia, you talk like this a bit. And that's actually more South African. Yeah. But you cross that with sort of Nazi-ish, you get a Nazi Australian. And that's what South African sounds like because of the Boers. The Boers. It's the white people, I guess. The black people in South Africa sound more like this, which is more like the traditional indigenous, I guess is the word, accents of not just South Africa but all of that part of the world talk like this, and that's good. But the white South Africans talk like Nazi Australians. And I had a friend in South Africa once, and I used to call her on the telephone, and I used to make fun of her accent because it is hilarious. And she got annoyed, and she said, the last thing she ever said to me was, don't muck my accent. Don't muck my accent. And I just said it straight after her, just like that, and she never spoke to me again. Which is fair enough. I was warned. But Elon Musk is from South Africa, and he does have a touch of the Nazi Australian about his voice. So the latest, his latest trick, which is why I wanted to do this, is he launched a car into space intentionally. He didn't do it by accident like they might do on an episode of Top Gear. He did it intentionally because he wanted a car to be in space. I think it's a Tesla car. I'm not sure. It's some kind of a motor car anyway, and it's you will have seen it on the news in other news, human interest bit at the end of the proper news. But he's a visionary. I think he's really there just to inspire people to be more futuristic, maybe. He just decided at some point in his head that the world is going to head towards a Star Trek version of reality, and he's going to do everything he can to try and do as much as possible to push us in that direction. And I'm a big fan of that. Or however successful he is irrelevant at that stage. It's just the attitude and the fact that he's a billionaire. Like, you take somebody like Sigmund Freud, who invented psychotherapy. Now, Sigmund Freud, as it turns out, was pretty much wrong about pretty much everything he said, because he thought all of our neuroses were because of repressed childhood sexuality, and that's clearly not true. But it doesn't matter, because he was the first guy to actually go to the bother of asking these questions, and he was the first guy to say, well, maybe this is something to do with a repression or a trauma, and we can talk it out, instead of locking you up in... before Freud, if women went crazy or whatever, they'd lock them up in a crazy house, and that's it. That's done. Because they were getting hysterical. Hyster being the word for a uterus. A uterus, what women have. And they were thought there was something especially female about being hysterical, and that there wasn't much you could do about it but just lock them in a room until they calmed down. And of course, this all goes into the whole thing about, at the time, the whole world would have been run by men who were incentivized to dismiss any female concerns about anything, and so on and so forth. And I guess all that amount of repression and that amount of stupidity builds up after a while, and Like, why wouldn't it? That doesn't mean you're crazy or anything. That means you're paying attention. That's the correct reaction to that kind of oppression, I think. Locking you up in a building isn't helping. And Sigmund Freud realised this. And I guess I know lots of people, whose lives have been improved by psychotherapy. So sometimes just having the vision is enough. You don't need the backup. You don't need all the right answers immediately. Like Freud had no right answers, let's be honest. But he had the vision. And I think Elon Musk has the vision. Elon Musk definitely has some of the right answers, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't have all of them. Well, he doesn't need them. He's a visionary, like David Bowie, you know? Although David Bowie had all the right answers as well. That's a terrible example. But Elon Musk is a visionary, and that's okay. So yeah, he launched a car into space, and the first thing I thought, because I saw it on the news, I didn't read it on the internet, I saw it on the news, and I saw the picture of the car flipping around the planet, and I was thinking there's probably some Russians up in that space station there, or some people still in that space station clicking buttons or whatever they do up there, checking soil samples, developing diseases that will kill us all in zero gravity. And every so often they go for spacewalks, you know, they put on the suit and they just humble around, or if they have to fix the outside of the ship, that happens sometimes, they're going to have to go out in the EVA suit, extra vehicular activity, the EVA suit, and go for a little walk outside the ship. And it'd be terrible. I mean, what if one of them dies? And how are you going to explain that to his family? How did he die? I would say, well, he got run over by a car. But he was in space. Yeah, he was in a spaceship, but this car, and because it's in orbit around the planet, it's not just going at 600 or 200 miles an hour. It's in 0G, flipping around the planet, probably at several thousand miles an hour. Like, I don't know what the orbiting speed of things is, but I don't know, it's probably 40,000 miles an hour or something. It must be very fast, because there's no drag, and you're being whipped around by the gravity of the Earth. So it must be thousands of miles an hour. Yeah, he got hit by a car. A car accident. First outer space. Well, not outer space. First outside the planet car accident. He got killed. He got run over by a car. It's terrible. Or worse, what if there's some weird slingshot thing happens and that car gets whipped out into genuine outer space, like beyond Pluto, and some aliens find it? Holy God, could you imagine? Oh my God, they're going to think of us. What are they going to think of us? They're going to be like, this is the worst designed spaceship. These people have no idea how to design a spaceship. You'd think they would have rolled up the windows at least. It's a convertible spaceship. Never put down the roof on a spaceship. That should be one of the rules. They're going to think we're crazy. We just don't know how to do it. Whose idea was this? And I bet Elon Musk has put his name on it somewhere. And they come looking for him, say, look, point number one, not only should you roll up the windows, but you should make some kind of an effort to make the thing airtight, or you will die instantly. That's how space works. Instant death all around. For literally millions upon millions of light years. Millions and millions of light years is just instant death all around you. And so far, the only pocket of not instant death we've found in the entire universe is this planet. This is why I like when Christians make the argument. They say, oh, this world is perfect, it's just right, you know, God made the world just right for humans. Isn't it great that, like, this place is just right, a little bit more and a little bit less and it wouldn't be wrong? Isn't that an awful coincidence? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this universe is 99.9 recurring instant death. It's just the universe is pretty much composed entirely of instant death. For anything. Just instant death. Even for those bacteria that live in underwater volcanoes. Instant death. For everything. And it's like it's just so illiterate to say something like, oh well, this universe is perfect. Like, good God, it might be perfect if you're a sterile speck of dust, you will thrive. But everybody else, it's instant death. Yeah, this spaceship is terribly designed. I mean, maybe they won't figure. I mean, maybe they won't know that we were just kind of having a laugh. Maybe there's aliens out there who do not have the concept of having a laugh. I don't know. All I know is he's managed to do in like 2 years less what Richard Branson's been trying to do for the last 40 years and failed to do, which is have a kind of realistic approach to space travel, getting people. Musk wants to have people like commuters, like regular folks, just traveling from London to New York on rockets, and he'll do it too. He'll do it eventually, you know. Like opinions differ whether this Musk guy is like, I don't know, maybe he's visiting us from the future to warn us that we're going to destroy ourselves, or maybe he's just an alien who wants to go home. I don't know. There's lots of like Bowie's character in The Man Who Fell to Earth. Maybe he's a lonely alien and he's pumping all the tech out because he wants to go home. He's not. He's from South Africa. His mother is a fashion model, like currently a fashion model, not retired. He's from South Africa. If he's from South Africa, would he count as a? Could you call him an African American? I mean, he's actually from Africa. You know, not Africa 200 years ago. He's actually from real life Africa. He remembers Africa. He might be even more, technically, he might be even more African American than black people. Because he can remember being cruelly ripped from his homeland and being forced to study physics and economics in the University of Pennsylvania. Although, as far as I know, he's managed to buy his freedom since, and he's a US citizen now with voting rights. Maybe a part of him always wants to go home. Africa is calling. The drums of... I don't know where white people live in South Africa, but I'm pretty sure it's not the shanty towns. He wants to make a Hyperloop train between New York and wherever else. It'd be super fast. It's a good idea. The commuter rocket thing. That's the commuter rocket thing. That's a good idea as well. Because the big trick with rockets is taking them off is bad enough because sometimes they explode. But the trick is trying to get them to land, and that's one of the things I saw him do. The rocket landed. 2 rockets landed perfectly synchronized. They just landed. They went up and they just landed straight down again. So clearly it's possible. And now it's a question of just refining the technique. He's also involved in a thing called the Boring Company, which is a drilling company. The Boring Company. And as far as I know, he had an idea that he wanted to put the entire traffic infrastructure underground and have people, instead of driving cars, we'd be in little carts. We'd drive the car onto a little carry cart thing, and the cart would zip around the city for you. You wouldn't have to drive anywhere. The whole thing would work on a computer system, and the computer would optimize how these carts would travel, which makes so much more sense than letting humans do it. Because humans cause traffic jams sometimes just by, like, there's a word for it, though, some kind of wave effect, where when somebody stops at the traffic lights and the traffic lights go green, you don't all start at the same time. The first guy goes, and then the second guy goes, and the third guy goes, and this causes a wave of inefficiency that goes all the way back even to cars that weren't in the traffic jam at all, because the stop still happens. If people, I've seen this happen, by the way, in Los Angeles. People, when there's an accident, people slow down and have a look because I guess we want to see what's going on, right? I'm not criticizing the people, I'm just saying what happens. What happens is when you slow down, all the cars behind you slow down, and when you're finished looking at the accident, you speed up to normal speed again, but all the other cars are still stuck in the wave that you created, and they could be in that wave because of the way highway mechanics works. They could be in that wave for 10 minutes, 20 minutes after the accident is just gone. So there'll be a slowdown and then a speed up, and then everybody in the slowdown will be wondering, wait a minute, why did we slow down? It's called some kind of a wave, but it's terrible. And if there was computers, you see, none of that would happen. Computers would be able to identify the quickest, best way in half a second and just send you that way, and if there's any problems, they can deal with them immediately, dynamically, in the best way possible. Right? That's a good idea. And it's called the Boring Company. Although the only thing I think they've done so far is they've sold 200 flamethrowers. Like fun, kind of nerfy looking flamethrowers. Although they are not a toy. Yes, they are, man. No private citizen is buying a flamethrower because for any functional reason, I promise you. Because all the functional reasons for having flamethrowers are taken care of by people who have those kind of jobs. They will already have access to them. Although I don't know what you'd need a flamethrower for. Why would you need a flamethrower? No idea. Why would you need to burn a whole lot of stuff really quickly in a mobile sense, like that you couldn't just drop a match on it? I don't know. Anyway, I think that's all he's done. He also is engaged in a project, again, the name of which I do not remember, but this is his... He's worried about this thing called artificial intelligence singularity. And artificial intelligence is... any kind of artificial intelligence is just the intelligence you program into a machine, right, using a computer code. So a thermostat that goes off, like that comes on at, say, 28 degrees and goes off at 32 degrees, that's a kind of artificial intelligence, because it does it itself, and you don't have to keep saying it, you just say it once. Just switch off at this and come on at that. So the thermostat has that kind of basic level of artificial intelligence. So... Sorry, I have a cough. I've had a cough for the last 2 months, and ever since I started taking these drugs for diabetes, I've had a cough. I think it's because I'm necking the pills in the morning. I don't know. Diabetes update. They send you off to do an eye test if you have diabetes, and they're looking for a thing called diabetic retinopathy, which means you're eating too much sugar, you're going blind. And I did a test for it, but I got scheduled, and because it's a public service and not something I was paying for, I felt it was important that I honour that, that I respect it. So I had a horrible migraine. I get migraines as well, like unconnected to any of this. Migraines are thumping, bad headaches that are attached to one side of your head, and they seem to, in my case, they seem to be attached to a particular vein on the side of my head, and they're just very, very painful. They don't indicate anything else, unfortunately. They're not a sign of a disease or anything. They're just your pain system in your brain has gone wonky, has made a mistake, and it registers this as a very grave threat, and it's not. It's just something, and it happens to me more often than I want to think about. Like, say, I get one bad one, say, once every 3 or 4 weeks, right? And usually I could just lay down on the bed and don't talk to anybody and close the curtains and everybody just shut up and leave me alone, and I'll be okay in about an average of about 18 hours, right? So it's not the worst thing that can happen, because even though it's intense pain and it's awful, and sometimes it gets so bad, like when I was a kid and I got these migraines, it would be so bad that I would throw up. And that's not a nice level of pain. I don't do that anymore. I just feel a lot of pain. But when I say it's not so bad, what I mean is I can always say to myself, well, look, this isn't going to last forever. This will be gone. Like, tomorrow I'll feel better, right? Because when you're in like an awful lot of pain, or you're in some serious kind of medical trouble, my first response, like my background fear, is that this is now the way things are going to be forever. I'm always going to have this pain in my head, and I'm going to have to find some way to live with it. And of course it's never true. It's just the pain puts these ideas into your head. So I just say to myself when I get these migraines, I say, look, everything's going to be okay tomorrow. Just hang on. Everything's going to be alright tomorrow. And usually it is. Sometimes I get these migraines. Very rarely I get migraines that last 2 or 3 days. Sometimes they do. And sometimes they last 4 hours. An average of about 18 hours. So the day is gone. Like, forget it, man. If you wake up with one of these things, your day is gone. Forget about it. But if you get one in the middle of the day, you might be okay. You might be able to sleep it off and then wake up the next morning and you'll be okay. But they're horrible. And I had one of these the day of my retinopathy appointment. And I didn't want to... I would have felt bad rescheduling, because I'm getting it a part of a government program, because I have a medical card, because I don't have any money. So I went, and they told me in the waiting room, they give you a piece of paper, and one thing they do is they give you eye drops to open up your pupils. Pupils is just the gap in your eye where the light goes in, and they need to make that bigger so they can take a picture of the back of your eye. And I told the lady, I went into the lady and I said, listen, I have a migraine and I can't see straight and I can't think straight, and I don't know if this is going to work out, but I had to come in. And she said, okay. So she was very nice. She said, look, we won't do the drops then. Just sit down on the chair, put your chin on this thing, and I'll take a photo. So she did. Now, when I sat down on the chair, this electric... See, different things set it off, you know. Bright lights will set off the migraine in a way that it'll cause a spike in the pain. And sometimes, like, rough things, like things hitting me. But not, like... I don't know, how am I going to explain it? Like a sudden sort of bang, rather than a hitting me. Like a sudden bang will send a jolt of pain right through my head, greater than the pain I'm already experiencing. So I sat down in the chair, but I sat down too suddenly, and my head went, oh. So I had to wait for a little while, and then the sun was coming through the through the window, so I had to move around, and she moved around with me, and that's good. So she didn't put the things in my eyes. She took the photos, and I got the results a few days ago, and I'm clear, meaning I don't have diabetic retinopathy, which means I'm still asymptomatic. I have very bad diabetes, but I have no symptoms of it. What is happening to me, though, is I think there's something about not eating the ton of sugar I was eating that's affecting my immune system, because I'm picking up things. Like, I never get colds, and I never get bugs of any kind. Like, I could have people throwing up all over me, and I'd never get it. I don't know why. I can't see the connection between a high sugar diet and a overly functioning, a very well functioning immune system. So it could just be my imagination, but I'm definitely picking up more stuff. That's not my imagination. I'm getting colds and things that I never got a cold. Maybe it doesn't matter. So I'm fine. I'm sure you're all delighted about that. I'm still asymptomatic, still not eating any sugar, still fine with that. And there's probably no connection. I'm gonna have to do something about my cough, though, I think. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe it'll go away, right? I'm a man. That's what men do. Maybe it'll go away. Maybe it'll go away. Dude, that thing is the size of a watermelon. Why didn't you come into me earlier? Because I am a man. Ha ha ha. Anyway, Elon Musk is afraid of artificial singularity. Artificial intelligence, AI singularity. Now, AI is just, as I said, thermostat, right? All the AI you know is just thermostat, a more complicated version of that, right? But he's afraid of AI singularity. Now, singularity means something different here. Singularity means that point at which artificial intelligence overtakes human intelligence with catastrophic consequences, goes the theory. If the computers get smarter than us, they think that people like Elon Musk think that the computers will take over and they'll want to wipe us out because we're deeply inefficient and we're programmed all wrong, right? Basically, if you think about the computer, if you think about HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, remember the computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey singing Daisy Daisy? Yeah, if you've seen that movie, that's basically the benchmark for our understanding of AI singularity, right? So Elon Musk he's invested billions of dollars into doing something about what he thinks is the singularity apocalypse. Stephen Hawking has gone on record as saying it could mean the end of our species. He thinks humans might be wiped out. Like, he really thinks so. He's not being funny about it. Ray Kurzweil, who is a professional futurist, which I think is a fantastic job title. He's a futurist. What do? I futurize. Do you? Yes. I futurize. Well, don't we all like futurize? Yeah, but I do it like we all do it 1 second at a time. But he's doing it more. And that's his job. His name is Ray Kurzweil. Like, he's well known in these communities. Anyway, he thinks we're going to hit singularity by 2045, the year 2045. Although, like, the problem is, of course, people have been saying these things for years. It's like peak oil, you know. When I was a kid, they were going to run out of oil by the year 2000, right? And what are we going to do? We're going to run out of oil by 2000. And then when we hit 2000, they're going to say, oh no, we're going to run out of oil by 2010. 2010, all the oil's going to be gone. Enjoy your life. Fill your boots. And 2010 rolled around, and that peak oil is never going to happen, right? We are going to run out of oil at some point, but it's not going to be the big crash that everyone thinks it's going to be. Eventually, oil will just get more and more expensive, and as it gets more expensive, entrepreneurs, creators, visionaries, and so on will invent different ways to handle the problem. That's how reality works. Like the motor car was originally created as a solution to the horse problem. Like, I'm not even joking. In concentrated populations, mostly in New York City, if everybody had a horse, what you had was an enormous horse poo problem. There was horse poo everywhere, which is why you have those high-rise brownstone walk-up places in New York, the old style. They had to walk up past the poo. So the car was a timely and necessary solution to the horse problem, and now we have a car problem. And it's possible that Elon Musk he didn't invent the electric car. The electric car was invented in 1890 something. What he's done is he's had vision. He's had the vision to realize that these electric cars can be just as performance heavy and functional as petrol cars for a fraction of the cost, and they can be super cool. Right? It doesn't have to be hippies in a blocky thing. You can have a super cool electric car doing super cool stuff. And he's right. That's vision. Like, he's completely changed the public perception of these things. Just one guy. That's vision. But people have been saying this thing about artificial intelligence is going to take over. One of the guys who developed the concept of artificial intelligence is a guy called Herbert Simon, who was a scientist working in a variety of areas. And he said in 1965, and I have the quote here because it's funny. He said, 1965, machines will be capable within 20 years of doing any work a man can do. Right? So people have been saying these things for a long time. And it's never been true. Like, it's very tempting. There's, like, you wonder how clever people like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, you couldn't say that those guys are anything but extraordinarily intelligent. And here's me, some guy with a podcast no one listens to, saying they're wrong. Which I am. I'm saying they're wrong. So, I feel like I should justify that, given that Stephen Hawking has many degrees in all sorts of physics, and given that Elon Musk similarly has many degrees in all sorts of areas that are related to his opinion in this matter. And my degree is in classical history. The history of the Greeks and the Romans, the ancient Greeks and Romans, up to about 200 AD-ish. And after that I lose interest. Okay, so what I think happened is, I think they fell victim to a number of cognitive biases. Well, of course, a cognitive bias, because we all have human brains, being very, very clever doesn't mean the cognitive biases don't happen to you. It's like an optical illusion. Like, if you see a cloud that looks like a weasel, me thinks it is a weasel, being very clever isn't going to make it less likely for you to see the weasel. Do you know what I mean? It's nothing to do with it. It's just a cognitive bias. It's the way your brain works, because you're human. It's nothing to do with being clever. So clever people are just as susceptible to these things. For a start, there's anthropomorphism, which means it's not a cognitive bias, I guess. It's just a way of looking at things. It means everything is looking at it through a human lens, right? So when you say computers will be smarter than us, you're looking at it as if human intelligence was somehow a benchmark for anything, when it's not. It's just a benchmark for human intelligence. I guess it doesn't count as a benchmark if it's for itself. So that's kind of a human-centered way of looking at it. A fear of the unknown. We make predictions for all sorts of reasons, but mostly because we're scared of any future chaos. And in order to try and put order on future chaos, we make predictions. Not because it's what we think is going to happen. Right? Predictions will always tell you more about what's happening now than anything in the future. Look at anybody who's ever made a prediction, right? All the way down from thousands of years ago. It just tells you about how people are feeling right now. Also, I think it might be related to an inability to contextualize available data, because we only have one global computer technology. We don't have anything to compare it to. There's the big thing about this AI thing, and the big thing that kicked it off, is a concept called Moore's Law. And Moore's Law was developed by this guy called Moore. I can't remember his first name. But he had the idea in the early 70s that computers would get faster and better at doing stuff their capacity basically to do all this stuff would basically double every 18 months or 2 years, right? So every 2 years or so it would double. And since 1975 that has held pretty accurate, which is very surprising for technology predictions. It has held. Although in 2015 Moore himself said that he thinks it can't last forever. And that is another cognitive bias. It's an extrapolation fallacy, which is a very, very common error we all make, including me, by the way. I'm not immune to any of this because I have a human brain as well. I do all these things. It's easier to see it when someone else does it, right? If when I'm doing it, I don't see it, I have to have someone else to point it out to me. This extrapolation fallacy is one of the most common problems you'll see people doing. It's the mistake of connecting the available dots with a line and continuing that line to infinity, right? That's a really bad mistake because let's say 5 people get the flu this year and 10 people get it next year and 20 people get it the year after that and say 40 people get it the year after that. Your line is going to look like a slope going way up, and by the time it gets to say 20 years the entire population of the world has the flu, when in reality 40 people get the flu and then maybe another 40 that year and then maybe 30, right? Because every one of these lines, every single one of them that's based on real world data, not in fictional things like dividing by 0. Like I'm talking real world data, like people who get the flu is a real thing that happens. Any of those lines that you connect the dots on, none of them will stretch to infinity. They will all plateau somewhere and then drop. Or plateau forever, maybe. But they won't go on up forever. They can't. Because infinity is not a reality-based concept. Infinity does not exist in reality. It's just a mathematical trick for making some of the numbers work out. Sometimes you want to do something because math is a modeling system. It's not a version of reality. It's not a way of looking at reality. It's just a modeling system to make certain things easier to determine, to do certain sums quicker. And we have this idea that, if it keeps going on like this, we're all going to die. Yeah, but nothing ever keeps on going on like this. It doesn't work like that. That's why you should always be wary of thin edge of the wedge arguments. Like if we allow men get married to each other, then soon it'll be okay for a guy to marry his toaster. That kind of thinking, that doesn't make any sense. It's just nonsense. But I think there's a lot of that in this artificial intelligence thing, that people think the singularity is going to happen because they're connecting the dots and they think it's going up and up and up and up and up forever. It can't. Nothing goes on forever. If you accept that nothing goes on forever, you'll see the problem. Now maybe you think that some things can go on forever, and then I respectfully disagree. So I think there's a lot of that. There's also confirmation bias, which affects us all, including me. Confirmation bias means you are far more likely to pay attention to notice, in other words, stuff that agrees with you than stuff that disagrees with you. And of course, when you're in information bubbles and echo chambers and Facebook has algorithms that specifically return to you things that are related to things that you've liked before, right? Like Amazon does the same thing. They say, if you have enjoyed this, the Tom Waits album, you might like this Tom Waits album, or you might like this other album that's like that Tom Waits album. Or a bunch of people who bought this album also bought this album, which has nothing to do with Tom Waits, but a load of people liked it who liked the Tom Waits album, and now you might like it, right? That's the Amazon thing. But the Facebook thing, it does that but with political opinions, and it doesn't tell you that that's what it's doing. Like at least Amazon says, they see it in letters, they say in language, they say it in words. People who bought this also bought this. So you know where the algorithm is, you know where they're getting the information from. With Facebook, it just exposes you to a bunch of stuff based on your political opinions. What they're essentially doing is they're saying, you have had this political opinion. Here are some other political opinions that are very similar to yours. Here are some people who have the same political opinion as you. Or here are people who have this unrelated political opinion, but they also share your political opinion. So you might like to see this. They're basically doing the Amazon thing, but instead of products, they're doing it with opinions and not telling you. Right? That's an echo chamber that you are in, that you live inside on Facebook, and they haven't told you. And that's fine. I mean, it's not... I think as long as you know that's what's happening, it's not so bad. But there's people who don't... Like thousands and thousands of people who are not aware this is what's happening. They think they're being exposed to stuff randomly. They think that they're their exposure to political opinions is representative of the general fabric of political opinions, when it's not. It's an echo chamber. Like, I like Trump. I like Trump too. All these Trumpy people are coming together. I don't like Trump. I don't like Trump either. All these don't like Trumpy people are coming together, and they think they're finding each other through serendipity, and it's just the Facebook algorithm. You know? If you want to find people who disagree with you, you have to look for them. You have to make an effort to look for people who disagree with you, which I do. I'm all forever tracking down right-wing people and saying, yeah, that's great, but what about this? You know? And it's a good way to get blocked. Not gonna lie. Been blocked a load of times by a load of people. And that's fine. I don't mind. I'll just keep exposing myself to different ways of thinking. Because how will I know how would anybody know if you're on the right track? Unless you specifically look for reasons why you're wrong, you'll never know. Like, let's say I say, take something like homeopathy, right? If I thought homeopathy is going to help me with my migraines, I can find thousands and thousands of websites. I clicked my fingers there and I don't know why. Thousands and thousands of websites, like as if I was a character on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Thousands and thousands of websites to to back me up on that. They'll provide evidence, or like, you can't see it, but I'm doing quotation marks. They'll provide evidence, and they'll explain why this homeopathy helps migraines and blah blah blah. Thousands of pages, and I'd be like, good lord, there's an awful lot of reasons to think that this opinion is true. But all you have to do is type in homeopathy migraine criticism, or just homeopathy criticism, and you'll be disabused of that notion in 2 pages. But people don't do that. People don't specifically look at... People think that if you have an opinion, the way to justify it is by finding information to agree with it. But that's like the opposite of the truth. Because finding information to agree with your opinion means nothing. I mean, I know it sounds like it means something, but it doesn't. Because you think of, we have to have evidence for that. Yeah, I know, but like, the first thing you should do is find evidence that it's not true. Like, that's what scientists do, you know. They go, and the peer review system, they say, we found this new drug and it cures cancer. Print your paper up in Nature magazine or The Lancet or whatever. A bunch of lads are going to come on and crash it. They are going to trash you. They're saying, we did that experiment that you outline here. Nothing happened. You big idiot. And then a bunch of other people are going to come in and say, yeah, we did the same thing. This no more cures cancer now than chicken soup. Because that's their job. That's how you find out information. That's how you bolster theories. That's how you make your theories strong. It's by specifically looking for information which contradicts them. You will never demonstrate your theory by just showing evidence in favour of it. Despite the fact that seems to be the effort. You need to find information against it. So that's confirmation bias. The tendency we all have, including me. I have to make an effort, by the way. It doesn't come naturally to me to look for reasons why my opinions are wrong. It certainly does not come to me naturally, and sometimes I forget, and I develop these ridiculous opinions until somebody comes in, and it's usually my wife. Someone comes in and says, Mary, why do you think that? And I'll say, well, this and this and this and this and this. I say, yeah, but also this. I'm like, oh yeah, I see what I did there. I did that thing that I keep telling other people not to do. And it's going to happen again. Because it's so bloody difficult. Your brain is designed a certain way and there's not much you can do about it. So that's confirmation bias. And also, I think a lot of these top IT guys and tech guys are inspired by science fiction. Elon Musk is clearly working towards a Star Trek future. And if you talk to any guy in NASA, a load of them are only in NASA right now. They've only got their PhDs in electrical engineering or whatever because of Star Trek. Even though they know a lot of stuff in Star Trek is impossible scientifically. It doesn't matter. It has the vision, right? Vision. You're inspired by visions, and then you worry about the details. And I think a lot of these guys are inspired by science fiction, and science fiction is full of, even Star Trek is full of stories where computers take over and they get super smart, and not just 2001, that's just probably the most dramatic one to the regular folks. But if you're into science fiction at all, you will be aware of this. Computers are always taking stuff over and getting humans into trouble, and like the joke in 2001, spoiler alert, the joke in 2001 was that the computer wasn't really evil or anything, it was just following orders, you know, not like a Nazi. I mean, it was following orders in the sense that it was doing exactly what we told him to do. He was programmed with this, saying this mission is very important. Like, this mission could be the most important thing that humanity's ever done. And he's like, yeah, okay, don't worry, I'll take care of it. And he somehow figured out on his own that the most efficient way to deal with this would be to kill everybody on board, because people are fools. They don't know what they're doing or where they're going, and they're just unknown quantities. They're variables. Just eliminate all the variables, and all you're left with is a more efficient system. And I suppose, yeah, that's not fair to say that that's the only public perception. I suppose Terminator would be as well, wouldn't it? Skynet. You know, Skynet goes live and takes over everybody, and, oh no, what are we going to do? Skynet went live, you know? My counter-argument to all these people is just, we can always just unplug the machine. Like, I have a computer here, and no matter what it tries to do, I just go behind it. Like, they can't, there's no physical element of the computer that can stop me from plugging it out. You know? It's just a screen and a processor and a bunch of chips. Like, there's no part of this that can move to stop me from plugging it out. And servers are like that too. If anything goes crazy, you know, just plug it out. That's the end of the problem. Like, oh no, this system will go down, that system will go down. Yeah, it's fine. Let the systems go down all the time and people just cope with it. You know? It's fine. If it looks like it's going to take over the world, you don't just leave it in and hope for the best. You just plug it out. Even though that will never happen, by the way. For reasons I've just explained. Computers are never going to take over. It's just a funny idea that people like. And then I said this to someone. On the line. On the internet. On the line. On the web. The World Wide Web. And they said, oh no, because the computers can upload themselves to the cloud, and oh god. You know, the cloud isn't... The cloud is just a terrible metaphor for a series of backup networks. But all of those networks are on servers. 100% of the cloud is on physical servers, and every single one of those is plugged into a wall. I don't know if the guys who invented the cloud would be using the word cloud if they knew it was causing this much trouble for people. And then people say, oh, what if the computers go wrong? What if there's a glitch, you know? What if there's a mistake in the programming, there's a glitch? But I don't know if these people have ever used computers before, but I have had hundreds of glitches happen to a wide variety of laptops and desktop computers in my time. Since I started with computers in 1987, I bought my first 88.6 computer. And then I had a 386, and then I went on from there. And I've had loads of computers and hundreds and hundreds of glitches that shut down the thing. Not a single glitch has ever increased performance or productivity. They've always either crashed the machine or caused everything to slow down, right? So if these things look like they're going to go live and they're going to take over and so on, you better pray there's a glitch, because that'll be the end of it. That's what you want. You want a blue screen. Imagine if Skynet was about to go live and then it blue screened. Problem solved. Just problem solved. Glitch. What if a glitch happens? Jesus, if a glitch happens, we're all saved. I don't know. I don't get it. Our lives, like in the Western world, our lives have been made better. Like unequivocally better by any time we let the machines handle the stuff. The Google cars, the driverless cars, are objectively much, much safer than human-driven cars. And any accidents they've had in the test runs with the driverless cars, every single one of those accidents would have been avoided if every car in that scenario was driverless. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Fly-by-wire systems on aeroplanes help people have safer and more efficient flights. Machines are just fantastic. They take care of all sorts of things. See, I've been thinking about this for a long time, because I've been writing an article about it. And the article I'm writing is about... Did I just whistle on the T for about? Sorry. Maybe my diction isn't the best. The idea that computers will be smarter than humans, like the assumption underlying that is that, you know, we don't know what human intelligence is. We don't really have a reliable way to measure it. We have no way to quantify it or to say, well, this person's smart and this person's stupid. Like, you can say informally somebody who's read a lot of books and somebody who knows a lot of stuff, if you like, is clever, if you want to say that. And that somebody who hasn't been to university or whatever is stupid. But that doesn't make much sense when you think about it, because like everybody's, unless they have a mental cognitive issue, everybody's basically smart, in some way. And passing a bunch of tests about what words I know and how much maths I can do, that might tell you nothing at all about how smart people are. But that's all they do with the IQ tests. The IQ tests, they really don't tell you much. Like, all they tell you for certain is how good somebody is at doing an IQ test. But there are, like, I was looking up this, and right-wing people for some reason reject this. They don't like it at all. But there's a bunch of stuff, like, they know that IQ tests that are subject to variations by race and by social status. And they're probably, like, you could say, they're probably common cause variables, because correlation doesn't imply causation. But you can't say that it's not there. You can't say that there's no variations for race, because there is. And there's no variations in IQ test results for social status, because there is. Well, there's a bunch of other stuff as well that there's nothing they can do about. Like, IQ tests have no way to measure things like morality or creativity or, personal integrity. They have no way to measure it. And those things are essential to being a fully developed human, There's no way to work it out. I mean, the IQ test might tell us nothing at all about how smart someone is. They'll just tell us whether they've read a lot, or whether they've been exposed to the kind of material that the IQ test tests for. Like, I can't do anything. I'm useless at maths. But I wouldn't like it if somebody called me an idiot because of that. All you can say is I'm bad at maths. I can't do any of those IQ math tests. I'd fail them all. But they're going to take account of that in my IQ score, because 20% of it is maths. So I'm going to get like a 0 in that particular 20% section. And that's going to go some way towards deciding whether or not I'm an idiot. And that doesn't make any sense to me. The same way as, like, I'm good with language and words. I'll ace all those tests. Those people who couldn't give a shit about language and words, and they don't know how to spell this word, and they don't know which word goes in which place, because it doesn't matter to them, but they're really good at maths. How can I say to them, like, how could you say to them, oh, you didn't know the difference between your and your, so that's 1% off your idiot score? What? It doesn't make any sense. There's no way to measure people's intelligence. All you can do is say, look, you're good at these things, and you're bad at these things. But it's nothing to do with whether you're intelligent or not. So that's why you say something artificial intelligence. You're not saying artificial, you're good at these things and bad at these things. They use the word artificial intelligence, and then they say AI singularity. So if you can't measure human intelligence, how in the name of Jesus are you going to simulate it? Like, how are you going to write that program that's going to simulate it? You can't. All you can do is write a program that does a thing and try to make sure it does it well. Like a thermostat. There's they use a test for machine intelligence to decide whether machines are intelligent, and it's called the Turing test, after Alan Turing. I remember his first name. And he developed a test, as everybody listening to this will probably know. It just said if you can fool a human into thinking that a computer is a human through normal conversation, then maybe it's smart. But maybe it's not. And it's gotten to the stage where, of course, people sometimes try to pass the Turing test, and there's like international competitions where they have people trying to test and see if they have a computer program that can actually respond to people organically. They never do. What happens in these things is humans mimic awkward, clunky, or overly accurate responses in order to fool a human into thinking they're a computer, which is the opposite of what you're supposed to do. But that's not how language works, and that's not how intelligence works. We don't know how intelligence works, but we know how it doesn't work. It doesn't work like that, and language doesn't work like that. Like language isn't just a bunch of grammar and then slotting a vocabulary into it. I mean, it can look like that if you're, you know what? If you've ever learned a foreign language, like say French, if you're not French, by the way, if you are French, obviously French is not a foreign language. But let's say you're learning a foreign language like French, like I learned. You learn the grammar and you learn the vocabulary and you learn this and you learn that, and then you go to France and you realize, no, they have their own approach to that thing, and there's really no way to teach it because it comes with a context that is unavailable to you because you're not French. Even like even when I was living in America, there's a bunch of ways they communicate that they share a context for what it means to be American, and it's very close to like the English and Irish context because we all speak the same language, but it's not. It's a different context. There's things that you're expected to just kind of know, even though even those people have never been told. It's just kind of an osmosis thing from their environment. And this forms a part of the unspoken context of everything they say and do. And a lot of people have trouble with it because they say, well, how can the Americans do this, and how can they say this, and how can they do that? It's just a different set of assumptions. It's not like dramatic or anything, it's just different, you know? And if you learn French and you go to France, you'll learn that you better learn fast about Johnny Hallyday. You know? Somebody you've never heard of before. Because they will say things and do things that will assume you know this and you're familiar with them. It's just how the same way as we do, by the way, here. In Ireland, there's a bunch of assumptions we have. Every time we use any language, we'll say things to people, to each other, that there's a bunch of stuff you don't have to say. Because we all know it, but the foreigners don't, because they don't have that context. And that's how language works. But there's no way to program that into a computer. So computers will never be convincing when it comes to language. How are you supposed to program unspoken context into a computer? Like, how would you do that even in theory? There's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, not just a little bit, by the way. A whole bunch of stuff that's necessary to understand sentences, but is never referred to even indirectly. Right? Things that only make sense because you and the guy you're talking to share a context, they share a series of understandings that are unspoken, and you don't even have to refer to them. You don't even have to say to them, hey, you're an Irish person, right? So you'll get this, you know? I mean, sometimes you get that on dailyedge.ie, but just in normal conversation, you don't have to say that. The unspoken aspect of language is huge, and that's how you're able to use things like irony and metaphor and hyperbole. Because without the unspoken assumptions, you'd have to explain that every single time I'm being ironic. Like, that's why there's a trouble sometimes. When you type stuff, I don't know why I started typing on my typewriter when I said type stuff. I mean, I assume you know how typing works, but yet I still found myself doing the mime. It's not even a mime, this is an actual keyboard. Never mind. When you type stuff, it's easy to have misunderstandings between people who don't share the context and don't have share the same series of assumptions that you do. Because the irony doesn't really come across sometimes. People can think you're serious. Metaphors sometimes are lost. You might have to say, because metaphor, yeah. I can't think of an example, but metaphors can be lost and hyperbole can be lost. You know? Like if you're in a car and someone cuts across you on the road, you can shout, "Oh, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill that guy." But I don't think anyone would take that as an actual death threat. It's just you're expressing anger. Like, that's hyperbole, right? But if you didn't have access to the series of assumptions that would lead you to that understanding, you could think of that as a threat. You could take that seriously as a threat. Right? How would you program a computer to deal with that? I don't mean like obviously not as a specific situation. I mean as a general idea. How would you program a computer to handle that? You couldn't. There's no way to do it. So they will never pass. The computer will never pass the Turing test. You're just wasting your time. Then there's people who think that, like HAL 9000 in 2001, there's not so much machine intelligence we have to worry about as machine consciousness, which means machines waking up, machines self-awareness. But then again, that has the same problem. And the problem is, we don't really know what human consciousness is, or even if it exists. I know it seems like you're conscious. It seems like you're making the decisions and you're aware of yourself personally, interior awareness, But it's possible that that's not true. Bear with me. It's possible that that's just what it looks like. Right? There's a lot of leading experts in human consciousness who think that consciousness doesn't exist, that it just looks like this, that this is just an emergent property of some brain function. In 1975, Julian Jaynes wrote a book called The Origin of Consciousness, which does exactly what it says on the tin. And it's about, he thinks consciousness cropped up relatively recently, about 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago maybe, and which is very recent when you think about it. And he thinks it developed just because people needed a way to model how other people react to them, if you follow me. People need a way of modeling how other people are going to react to them. I need a way to model how someone else is going to react to the things I say and do. And the only way to model it really is to have a sense inside yourself of how you would react to them reacting to you, kind of. That's what consciousness is, according to him. And that's backed up by a lot of research. There's a guy called Chris Paley, and he wrote a book called Unthink, and it's very recent, 2014. Sorry, when you're 42 years old, 4 years ago is very recent. In 2014, he wrote a book called Unthink, and he reproduces a bunch of psychological and sociological experimental data, like loads of it, to demonstrate much the same thing, that in order to function socially, we need a model of ourselves that roughly corresponds to how others are modeling us. So in other words, consciousness isn't so much our personal interior awareness, but a modeling system which is absolutely necessary for any kind of social activity. I don't know if this sounds complicated. I mean, I'm trying not to make it sound complicated, but I've failed at that before. There's a famous line which is written by a Canadian poet, and it goes like this. And it's basically encapsulating the whole thing in one line, and it says, I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. That's consciousness. But it feels like it feels like you have a personal interior awareness, and it feels like you're making decisions. But that's not what consciousness is at all. It's just a modeling system for how others respond to you and how you expect others to respond to you. Right? No? Well, it's a theory. I mean, it's not true. It's not a truth. It's just a theory of consciousness, because it's very difficult to test for these things. It's very difficult to test for qualia, which is the philosophical word for anything that has no way to test for it. Like I can tell you, if you stick a pin in my hand, I'll tell you it hurts, right? And I'll say that creates pain. It's a kind of a sharp pain. But there's really no way for me to explain what it's like to have that feeling. All I can do is try to explain it, but there's no way to communicate what it's like, and that's the problem. Because I could use my words, all the words in the world, to tell you what this feels like, and you still wouldn't really know until I stick a pin in you. And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, cool, yeah, thanks. Like, I can explain to you how a car works, I can explain to you what it's supposed to do, how you put the pedal down to make the wheels move, etc., etc., and you will never know what it's actually like to drive a car until you sit in one and drive off. I can even describe for me what it's like. I can say like the Americans associate private car ownership with a feeling of freedom, social mobility, independence, and so forth. But that's still not a communication of... I mean, I'm trying, but it's still not a communication of what it's like to drive a car on the road. So that's a qualia. It's something that's impossible to... You can't really measure it. Like, there's no way to measure what it's like for you. There'll be people for whom It's not like that at all, and they won't be able to communicate that at all. Even after I've explained all this, and they go to drive the car, they say, "Well, it's a way to get from A to B." I don't see I don't get any of this freedom and independence thing you're talking about, which is fair enough. But there's no way to, there's no way to relate to someone else's impression of something. Like, the closest you're going to get is art, things like movies and literature and paintings, and because those things they don't go through the normal filters of understanding. They just act. They come in at an angle. Right? All good art comes in at an angle. You don't want stuff that's not coming in at an angle, But there's no indication that any kind of computers have anything like that. And they never will. Oh yeah, I just made a prediction. What about it? Uncomplicated, I have layers, alright? So what's going to happen? If computers are going to keep getting smarter, what's going to happen? Well, smart doesn't mean anything, but let's say they keep getting better at the things they can do good at. The things they can do good at, oh my god, that grammar. Let's say they keep getting better at... computers do some things very well, and we can assume that they're going to get better at those things. That's better, right? Computers do some things very well, and it's reasonable to assume that they're going to get better at doing those things. So crunching numbers, they're going to get better and better at that. My thermostat is going to get better at detecting when to click on and click off, and it's going to find more efficient ways to do that, and it's going to find better ways to give me more control over the whole process, right? But it's never going to wake up and take over my house. That's just not going to happen, and it's ridiculous to think that it would. And I think all computer systems are like that. They're just going to get better and better at what they do. They're not going to wake up and try to kill everyone, Last year, Facebook admitted that some Russian bad hombres had used Facebook's algorithms to influence the American election, and they'd been denying it up to this point, and they admitted it then because it was kind of hard not to, because all of the 17 branches of the American law enforcement community, like the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and blah blah and blue blue, they all said this is something that happened. And people think that's a problem, that this is a sign of the incoming apocalypse, of singularity, of AI singularity, but it's not. It's just the algorithms working the way they were written, exactly the way they always did. There's no sense of awareness. The computers didn't do anything special. There's always going to be people with bad intentions, who want to use technology to help them enact those plans, and there's always going to be people who are working on solutions to those threats. So any technology is the same thing. But just because that's happening, that's not a risk-benefit analysis of any particular technology. I mean, there might be technologies where you say, well, this is going to be dangerous, but it's not going to be dangerous because it's self-aware. It's going to be dangerous because of what you've asked it to do, specifically. Like, that doesn't mean it's waking up. It doesn't mean it's intelligent. Like, we're facing a lot of real problems as a species, like climate change. Like, there's entire countries in the South Pacific that are going to be wiped out because of this climate change thing. Finite resource exhaustion. It's not just about petrol. There's a bunch of stuff which, if you think about it, we're going to run out of at some point. Non-sustainable agricultural practices. You can't keep chopping down trees, to grow soy farms or to grow meat farms. Pharmaceutical resistant diseases. There's from Southeast Asia. There's new strains of tuberculosis coming out that are resistant to the standard treatment because they're not applying the antibiotics properly. Not through their fault. They don't have the supplies and they're trying to help people. But if you don't do it right, sorry. Sorry. I have a cough. The tuberculosis gets antibiotic resistant. So what are you going to do then? Just watch people die? That's a threat. And so on and so on. But we've made it through ice ages, and we've made it to saber-toothed cats and wars and famines and plagues, and basically, as long as someone is standing beside the plug, I think we're going to make it through this. So that's That's it? Oh my god, I've been talking for an hour. I am sorry. I specifically told my wife I wasn't going to do this. Anyway, this is the end of the show. Going to end quick. If you liked it, tell your friends. If you didn't like it, please tell everyone you know. And I am out.
Not like